Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, friends, and Mr. Ahmad Firdaus. We are Group 1. We had chose Topic 13, Religion and Terrorism. Our group members are me, Teck Yao, Yao Min, Wei En, Roshan, and Kim Wei. So first, Wei En will present the introduction of religion and terrorism.
The word religion is come from the Latin word religio, which means to tie or bind together. Religion is a social and ethical force based on someone's attitude towards the universe. It is the feeling of social solidarity with items that are regarded as power as well as the establishment of relationship with them. Religion can play a significant role in one's personal identity. Belonging to a religion usually means more than just belief in principle and performing its ritual. It also means being part of a community and a culture. Next, Emile Durkheim is a first sociologist to examine religion scientifically. He concluded that every religion separates the seeker from the prophets. He believed religion is about the community. He stated that the source of religion is society collective mindset. Next, the word hero is derived from the Latin verb "tesseria", which later became terrere. The term terrorist and terrorism were first used in the 1790s to describe the terror used by revolutionaries against their opponents during the French Revolution. During the conflict in the Northern Ireland, the Basque Country and the Estado-Paladino conflict in 1970s, this word became frequently used internationally. From the 1980s onwards, the words are used to highlight the rising usage of suicide attack, which is the September 11 attack in New York City. Terrorism in quotes form is the use of the intentional violence to achieve political goals. It's generally used to refer the violence against non-combatants during peacetime or in the context of war. Government and non-state organizations commonly use the word to abuse opposite parties. However, when terrorism is perpetrated by national government, it is not considered as terrorism. Next, I'll pass to Yao Min.
Hi, I'm Yao Min. Here to continue with type of terrorism. There are many types of terrorism such as new terrorism, state terrorism, and religious terrorism. Firstly, the new terrorism exists when there is the end of the 20th century. They are the modern terrorists that indiscriminate and it will cause more people injured. Their characteristics is usually attack to people from different organizations. Next is state terrorism. It's referred to the terrorism that conducted by governments or established by government against its own people of the state. Also, it can be the military's actions by its target to non-combatant target. For instance, World War II bombings of Pearl Harbors, London, Chongqing, and Hiroshima. It usually starts when the governments against perceived enemies. Lastly, religious terrorism is a type of terrorism that using violence in religions. They will undergo violence actions and tactics to achieve their goals or influence the religious identity. Religious terrorism believes that there is an otherworldly power has commanded them to undergo violence actions and in order to obtain the greater glory of the faith. To define a terrorist, there are a few of characteristics. Firstly, They like to use violence to reach their goals. They hope that they can control the government, then let them release power and granting political rights by using the violence actions. Next, they enjoy the cases that they had done because they trust their cause onto the world's agenda. They think that the dead bodies, destroyed buildings, and properties are the product of terrorism. Third, they're more direct against on innocent citizens because they want the feeling of fear or scared happen between them. However, terrorism are difficult to define between many citizens. This is due to every people will think terrorism must be involved of using violence or force, but actually there are many types of terrorism. For example, there are some terrorism will let citizens feel fear and scared, then agree to their opinions. Also, it is hard to define when there are some citizens undergo violence action and the person will be said as terrorism. But actually, the person is just happened in the wrong place, times, and occur the wrong action. Also, people are lack of the knowledge about terrorism and they will judge the thing with their own opinions. Now I will pass to my member Tek Yao to continue the presentations.
Thank you, Yao Min. So, the most famous terrorism attacks that happened in 21st century is the 911 cases. It is also known as September 11 attacks. It happened in 2001, September 11th. It was carried out by 19 Islamic terrorists. More than 3,000 people died and 24 people was missing in these attacks. The four hijacked US commercial planes are Flight 11 from Boston to LA, Flight 175 from Boston to LA, Flight 77 from Washington Airport to LA, and the Flight 93 from Newark Airport to San Francisco. Some of the passengers and flight attendants said that the hijackers used toxic chemical sprayers, for example, pepper spray and tear gas, and knives that less than 10 cm, and some of the flight attendants were stabbed and etc. Then the first crash happened in the north building of the World Trade Center at 94 to 98 floors at 8:46 a.m. Then the second plane crashed into the south building of the World Trade Center at 78 to 84 floors at 9:02 a.m. Next, this had caused a huge explosion. At least 20 people that jumped out from high floor because of cannot afford the heavy smoke and fire. Then the FAA had prohibited all the planes flying across the country or taking off. Then the third crash happened in west side of Pentagon at 9:37 a.m. The last crash of the hijacked plane happened in southeastern area of Sunnyvale, Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m. This incident caused the US economy facing downturn and also lead to a depression of the global economy. So next, how terrorism launch an attack in city. There are two types of attacks which are raw terrorism and hostage taking episode. First, raw terrorism. These kind of actions are usually carried out without any communication with the authorities. It contains the bombings, assassination, massacres, and arson. Then the second is the hostage taking episode. It is the act of seizing or holding a person as security for the fulfillment of a condition. For instance, the kidnapping, hijacking, and seizures. Now I will pass to Roshan.
I'm Roshan, here to present the causes of terrorism. First is economic factors. Poverty will cause resentment and some will turn to terrorism to express their anger, especially when people are deprived with certain resources and opportunities. Many societies will still have great potential such as job opportunities and higher living standards. But still many citizens have no jobs, no income, resulting in lower living standard. This let the people feel inequality and they become angry when they did not achieve things that others can easily accomplish. This develops social inequalities, thus result to internal conflict in certain areas, regions, and therefore more prone to terrorism. Next is about political factors. Violation of human rights, including deprivation and insult, causing people have seriously dissatisfied to government. Some studies have shown that terrorism is closely related to society injustice at the hands of government rather than poverty. Respect for human rights played an important role in the lives of citizens. Its job to government ensures that people receive the necessary care and resources. When these are not happen, it may free the people from the shackles of the government and is a good time for terrorism to recruit when citizens displeased to government. Next is about social factors. Religion is another social aspect that need to be considered. In modern terrorism, religious terrorism has increased dramatically. The scale of violence in global impact has expanded. They believe in violence recognized by some extraordinary power or sometimes directing terrorist violence for the greater glory of faith. People involved in religious terrorism believe that any of their actions will be forgiven and will be rewarded in the afterlife. Next is about the impacts. Terrorism creates a huge impact on a country's economy. The most direct and measurable impact of terrorism is material damage. Terrorists destroy existing factories, machinery, transportation system, workers, and other economic resources. On a smaller scale, acts of terrorism may blow up cafes, churches, or roads. Moreover, terrorism may aim to harm tourists. Therefore, many people from other countries may not visit to the country that have high presence of terrorism. On a broader scale, this hurt the country's international trade. Next is about the number of fatalities. As we can see from the data, the number of deaths recently in 2019 is 25,082. The lowest number of deaths is in year 2011 and the largest number of deaths is in year 2018. Even though the attacks are declined in some of the years, but the fear of the terrorism is still impressed in many people's minds. Now I will pass to my members, Kim Wei, to continue the presentations.
I am Kim Wei. Religious terrorism refers to religious-related violence or threats or violence committed within the name of religion. The common index for religious terrorism is that the integration of spiritual beliefs and ordinances becomes the basis for violence, so that almost every religion has beliefs which most times are interpreted by their extremist adherents as justification for acts of terrorism. Thus, it is possible to possess African religious terrorists, Buddhist terrorists, Christian terrorists, and Hindu terrorists, and so on. Religious terrorism has been a periodic event in human history and is sometimes being used for defensive motives and for the will to dominate and conquer. Religion is quite used as an instrument to support their intention to perpetrate violence. Terrorist groups within the Middle East do justify their act through religion. They are combining the powerful tools of terror and religion to undertake to vary the political environment. The history of world religion on its part is punctuated by violence which resulted from the very attempts to expand, conquer, and dominate. Next, their sacred texts contain verses that promote peace, also as texts that have terrorism understood. For instance, terrorists is employing its potency as an instrument to justify and enhance terrorism. Religion importance in contemporary terrorism is as way of communication. It shows how religion is being treated. Also, violence has often found recourse to trickster religious talks to justify evil past. Next, there are a lot of impact of terrorism towards region. Due to some of the region might have some extremists, so the ones will afraid to join a region. For instance, terrorists will use violent action to force them in order to make other followers to agree their opinions. Also, a leader can manipulate religion, defining their political goals in terms of importance from God. If they will convince followers that God wants a specific result and that they are his truth, they will argue that any means to realize these results are legitimate. When there is no one is willing to join a religion, then the religion will have lesser supporters and followers. Therefore, the religion's credibility and reputation will drop. The number of people that do not have beliefs will increase. Thus, the religion will become invincible and disappear in the future. Now, I will pass to my member, Taya, to continue.
Thank you, Kim Wei. So, at last, to avoid the terrorism attacks happen again in future, we need to enhance the human spirit from the religion. As stated above, although there are a lot of religions around the world, but they are all quite same. Their teaching is to lead the human being to be good and kind. Then, use the religion to influence the terrorism. Most of the terrorist attacks was motivated by religion. So we need to share the real and truth information about religion to society. Lastly, enhance and use the counter-terrorism. For example, the FBI. It is Counter-Terrorism Division, CTD. It is a division of the National Security Branch of the Federal of Investigation. It can highly avoid the terrorist attack happen in the future. So in conclusion, we hope that the terrorism will not happen again in the future and the human being is always live in a peaceful environment and condition. That is all of our presentation. Thank you.